Well, hello and welcome to Landlord Voice, the podcast of the Scottish Association of Landlords, bringing to you all the news and views of what's happening in Scotland's private rented sector. As always, I'm joined by Alan Grant, our PR consultant here at SAL, and together we'll be once again co-hosting this podcast. So welcome back, Alan.
Thanks, John. Always good to be back in the studio for another episode of Landlord Voice. Just before we kick off, I'd just like to remind everyone who is listening and watching that they can catch up on all the previous episodes of Landlord Voice wherever they get their podcasts. And we would encourage you, whatever you are, to like, share, subscribe, and comment. It really helps us out to get these, to kind of keep these shows going.
Yeah, and we've got 12 in the bag already, so we've done almost, a complete year, slightly more than that, but 12 episodes, so a lot there to go through if you're interested in and having a listen effectively to those podcasts.
I don't know if we'll eventually do a one big supercut of all of them for people to,
there you go.
People
There's an
to
idea.
kind of fall asleep to. Do we use podcasts these days?
And I think we're always keen to hear views from people as to subjects we could be covering. So if anybody's got any hot ideas as to, I would really like one to focus on this particular subject, let us know. We're always keen to hear what you've got to say.
Well, and in this episode of Landlord Voice, we'll be going through the newly appointed housing spokespeople for each party in the Scottish Parliament, now that the dust has basically settled on the elections for this year. We'll also be continuing our latest in our series of expert interviews. We've got Ava Bradley from Victim Support Scotland, and that should be another great discussion for the books.
Great. Well, let's kick off then, Alan. So with regards to Scottish Parliament, we've gone through the process of the election, the appointment of the new cabinet, and of course all the opposition parties have been busy trying to get their spokespeople together, and of course the Scottish Parliament and creating new committees in Parliament as well too. So give us the lowdown of who has got that housing brief in the Scottish Parliament.
Yeah, well, again, during our last episode, which you can, again, as we said earlier on, catch up with, we saw that we got the new Cabinet Secretary for Housing. She also takes social justice. That's Shirley-Ann Somerville. She's also intuitively doubling up as the SNP's housing spokesperson. The Tories have gone with experienced Highlands and Islands MSP, Tim Eagle. He's also their chief whip and holds the transport brief as well, so putting an awful lot of trust in him. Labour have kept Mark Griffin where he is. He remains as housing spokesman, and the Scottish Liberal Democrats have chosen a new MSP, Morven McCallan. The Greens have gone with Iris Durrani, one of their new intake as well. And I think what everyone was waiting for was finding out who's going to be holding the brief for reform. They've gone with Thomas Kerr, who's also their deputy leader, kind of signalling how high up on their list of priorities housing and housing issues are going to be. So, John, you've had a chance to have a look at who's in those roles. What's your reaction? What do you think?
Well, I think it's always a good opportunity for us as SAL to engage with new MSPs, and as you've just outlined there, quite a few of those housing spokespeople are actually new to the Scottish Parliament. So they're very much finding their feet as an MSP as well as within their brief there as housing spokespeople. So I'm very keen to engage with them. That's an exciting opportunity for us because it's about starting a new conversation. And I'm always keen to do that, to really set out our stall in the private rented sector, to say, listen, we are very much needed as private landlords and letting agents in Scotland. You need to value us, you need to work with us, and together, hopefully, we can create a better private rented sector in Scotland.
Shirley, and the interesting thing, I think, for me, is the housing brief almost across the parties has gone to fairly high profile, fairly well thought of kind of key figures within most of the parties. Does that say something about how the parties are treating housing, and particularly treating the housing emergency in terms of their priorities?
Yes, I think it does. And in our last episode where we're talking about the appointment of Shirley-Ann Somerville as the Cabinet Secretary for social justice and housing. So again, it was about elevating housing to a cabinet position. And I think because the government has done that, opposition parties have been able to look at that too and say this has to be a priority for us. And we are certainly pleased that's the case, because housing should be first and foremost in our politicians' thinking as to how we develop that. And obviously for us in the private rented sector, I want the private rented sector to take a more prominent role in providing much needed housing here in Scotland. So I'm keen to engage with all of these people, and I think it's very positive that, as you say, these opposition parties have put some of their key people in those roles.
That's right, and of course you'll be looking to meet with and start discussions with all of the housing spokespersons. What are you expecting from them going into those conversations? What sort of their end of the bargain, as it were? What are you looking for?
Well, since the election, of course, we go through this process, and you know this better than me, that MSPs have to organise their offices, they have to get their staff in place, as well as familiarise themselves with the parliamentary processes, especially if they're new MSPs. So that takes time, and they're still finding their feet, as it were. And of course, for those who have these appointments and become the new housing spokespeople, that's another challenge for them, and another learning curve there. But the good thing for us is that we can engage with them pretty early on, and we're starting to do that, to say, listen, this is the role we play in Scotland's private rented sector. How can we help you achieve whatever your aims actually are within your respective parties? Now, some parties are not wholly supportive or supportive at all of the private rented sector, and that's a challenge for us. I accept that. They are elected based on their party's position when it comes to housing across the piece, not just in the private rented sector. So I have to take that on board. But what I always find, especially with new MSPs, is they are keen to listen and they're keen to engage. They might not agree, but they want to hear the views from others. And I think that's reassuring. And there's many conversations I have with some of these MSPs where they'll say, John, I understand that and I agree with that, but our party takes this position, and this is where we're going with that. And how can you help us shape that? Because I'll be honest with you, that's the direction of travel we're going in. So there's a lot of negotiation in there too. And it's soul searching. It's an opportunity for me to say, but have you thought about it this way? Or perhaps through understanding how this could impact on landlords and letting agents, you might take a slightly different view. And I've seen politicians of all political parties change their views over a parliamentary period. So it's always worth having those all-important chats, and especially very early on, which is what we're doing.
Absolutely, and as you say, Sal will be kicking off those conversations imminently. So yeah, I'm sure we could go further into the weeds on this, and I'm sure we'll revisit this subject as we go forward. But I think for now, it's probably time to welcome Ava to the show for our latest in the series of our expert interviews. So welcome to the show, Ava.
That's great. Welcome, Ava.
Hi, John. Hi, Alan.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, Ava. And a big thank you, because Eva's actually on holiday, so she's broken her holiday to do this interview with us today. So we're delighted, and we're well impressed with your dedication as well, Eva. So thanks for taking the time to be with us.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, antisocial behaviour is a huge thing for us in the private rented sector. It's a big thing for private landlords and letting agents to manage. It's a problem for landlords, agents, and it's a problem for neighbours as well too, who are, in all intents and purposes, victims of sometimes the behaviour of our tenants in the private rented sector. And of course, everybody expects the private landlord, to be responsible, to take action and fix the problem. But that's not always possible. So we're delighted we've got Ava here from Victim Support Scotland to tell us about a new project that is launching that hopefully would help landlords do just that, would support the sector. So could you maybe start, Ava, by telling us a little bit about Victim Support Scotland and what this new project's aiming to do?
Of course. So Victim Support Scotland, we support people impacted by any type of crime, whether it's been reported to the police or not. It's free, confidential, and trauma informed, and really tailored to meet different people's needs. So if it's via the phone, in person, we're quite adaptable. The main aim is that we're kind of campaigning for victims' rights, witnesses' rights as well. So victims are at the heart of everything that we do. We want people to be treated with dignity, respect, and really feel listened and valued throughout the whole process as well. So yeah, it's a brand new project. It is an antisocial behaviour project for the private rented sector. It's funded by Safe Deposit Scotland. So it's quite recent. So I joined Victim Support in April as the antisocial behaviour project coordinator. The hopes of the project is to kind of meet that gap of there is quite an intenseness with antisocial behaviour, and it almost feels like there is a lot of confusing processes involved, and it can be really stressful for people experiencing it, but also people trying to work within it if you're in the private rented sector as well. So the project is kind of giving that kind of tailored free resources training for landlords or anyone within the private rented sector. And this is really based on their kind of training learning needs as well. So I'll be doing a lot of partner engagement, finding out what it is that people are struggling with that they can't grasp or that they really need kind of more information on, and then developing that through that. It's going to be very lived experience based, so focus groups of people experiencing antisocial behavior as well. And there'll be a clear referral pathway. So if people know any neighbors or tenants that are experiencing antisocial behavior and it's really impacting their life, they can kind of get one-to-one support with our support coordinators. It's a Scottish wide project as well. So they'll be able to kind of go wherever they are in their local area and kind of get support there. With the project as well, it's very focused on kind of bridging that gap of knowledge, but also accessing financial assistance as well. So there'll be a emergency assistance fund, which is up to £3,000 per person as well, which anyone experiencing antisocial behaviour can kind of make an assessment or application for that as well. But overall, increase everyone's understanding of what is antisocial behaviour, how to respond to it in a very trauma-informed, victim-centred way.
So I think really that's a very good overview of the entire project there. But really what you're saying is you would be a go-to resource there for landlords and letting agents, and indeed neighbours too. So if anybody's concerned about the impact that antisocial behaviour is having on people, they can come to your project and seek that all important help, whether it's through training and support, or sometimes it's maybe even just to be able to speak to somebody at the end of a phone. I assume all of that's available through the project.
100%. Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
So let's home in on antisocial behaviour for a second here, because I don't think people often grasp what antisocial behaviour is. So it maybe means something quite different to me as to what it does to you. So how would you define that, and what impact might it have on people, and that's tenants as well? Because equally you could have tenants complaining about antisocial behaviour of neighbours. And that becomes an issue, of course, for the tenants as well as the landlords. So how does it impact on all people, communities, and of course, landlords and letting agents?
Absolutely. So antisocial behavior is any nuisance or behavior that is causing anyone distress. It is usually repeated, targeted, and largely unreported. So a lot of the times it's not just a one-off situation. It's very much so impacting on people's day-to-day lives. It could be anything from kind of a noisy neighbor consistently. It could be threats, forms of vandalism, any kind of harassment. And it's usually as that kind of it is hard to kind of report because some people feel like they're not going to be listened to, or it's not going to be taken serious. There's a lot of like negative kind of response to antisocial behavior. People tend to maybe minimize it, like it could be worse, or it's like, well, it's only a petty situation. But it really does kind of try to like chip away at people's well-being, especially in their homes if they're not feeling safe, especially within communities. If there's a large kind of antisocial behavior issue within a community, communities don't feel safe. It has impacts on people's kind of, they might feel isolated, hopeless. It really impacts their physical and mental well-being. It can have financial constraints if they're already like living in kind of a poverty level. It can really kind of restrict them in that sense. In terms of the private rented sector, it could have letting agencies and landlords having damage repairs, maybe kind of rental arrears, people not being able to pay their rent. Kind of that tension between your tenants, maybe that distrust. If it is someone that is kind of perpetuating ASB, there is that distrust that they can't, feel like they can live comfortably there. It's a lot of kind of complicatedness, and especially if you're working within it as landlord lend agency as well. There's a lot of maybe legal procedures that might kind of escalate. And yeah, largely a huge impact on everyone's kind of well-being and financial beings as well.
And you know, Eva, that one of the challenges for landlords and agents is that we are restricted legally as to what action we can take. And you need to have a lot of evidence to be able to take action against tenants who are engaging in any form of antisocial behaviour. And ultimately, that means issuing notice to leave or notice to quit to end the tenancy. But that takes time. You need to gather that evidence. And in the meantime, there could be further disturbance to neighbours and communities. What kind of ideas of early interventions do you foresee the project might be able to aid landlords and letting agents with? Give us some examples of those interventions that might actually avoid that tenancy coming to an end or that tenant being evicted.
Yeah. When we're dealing with antisocial behaviour, it's been proven that early intervention is the most kind of effective way to respond to it. So if you're a letting agency or a landlord, it's that kind of early indicator. If someone's moving in or has moved in and there is any maybe kind of support needs, it's kind of trying to see what that kind of might have, what other kind of organizations they might have to reach out to. A lot of the times it is early mediation. So if it is between a mediator, the police, whoever the person impacted feels kind of comfortable with, but mediation is one of the most like effective responses as well. So bringing people together. Sometimes people that are kind of perpetuating ASB don't really necessarily know the impact that they're having on that person. And when they're in those kind of situations where they're listening to that impact and there's like appropriate kind of place for them to speak their kind of side of the story as well, that's quite effective. And it is just identifying any support needs if there is tenants or neighbours as well. So other support organisations, signposting them for support as well. But I think most importantly, it is just listening to people that are feeling and impacting it.
Well, thank you, Eva. There's a lot there for us to unpack from what you were telling us there, and I'm sure many landlords and agents will be wanting to find out more. So if people are interested in your project, how do they go and find out more about it?
Absolutely. Well, next week I'll be hosting an online information session. It's been posted in the Scottish Association for Landlords kind of newsletter as well. So that'll be a very good overview of what the project is, what we can offer as well, and that'll be downloaded. So if people can't attend, I'm more than happy to kind of send that off to them as well. Definitely feel free to reach out to my email. It's ava.bradley@victimsupportscot.org.uk. More than happy to kind of arrange a chat and see how we can work together as well.
That's great. And of course, people can get in touch with the Scottish Association of Landlords if you're not a member to ask for more details about the project. And no doubt we'll be putting more in social media. We'll be putting links to that. I know you're new in post and developing all the materials as we speak. And of course, this week is Antisocial Behaviour Awareness Week, so it's very apt that we talk about this subject and bring this to the attention of landlords, letting agents and local communities who are very much concerned about the effect that antisocial behaviour has on everyone. So thank you, Eva, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time out of your holiday. Go back there and enjoy the sun, have some good time off, and no doubt we'll be hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care. See you.
Well, very interesting chat with Ava there. John, I just wanted to dig down into this. Is antisocial behaviour something you hear about a lot from members? Does it come up on a fairly regular basis?
Yes, it is. It is a major issue for all landlords and letting agents, and I would always say, if you're a landlord and agent and you haven't encountered this, you're going to have to do it at some point. And so you need to really be aware as to how you can manage it. We've got a legal responsibility to take action. But as I was alluding to earlier, it's really difficult because ultimately, if that tenant's refusing to engage with you, if the tenant isn't interested really in changing their behaviour, or they feel it's other people's problem and not their problem, then your only option is to bring the tenancy to an end. But in order to do that, you have to have enough evidence to be able to issue notice, to be able to even go down the process of going to the first tier tribunal to gain eviction. And that's not a quick process. And in the meantime, you have neighbours who are incredibly distressed. And there is nothing worse than living next door to someone who is causing antisocial behaviour in whichever shape or form that might well be, and you can't sleep at night, etc., etc., and you don't feel comfortable within your own home. And so often what happens in these scenarios is you've got the landlords and agents on one side, the neighbours on another, and actually the people or person who's perpetrating this problem is the tenant there in the middle, who are often not engaging, not interested. So the advantage of this project might well be it brings in a third party. So that third party can come in, can speak to both the neighbours, the tenants, as well as the landlords or agents, respectfully. So I think that's going to be a good tool for us all to use. And even her team and the whole project will be able to hopefully find a resolution for all parties. And sometimes, as she alluded to in the interview, people just need somebody to speak to air their concerns. And even if it is the tenants causing this problem, then I'm sure they will have concerns too. So how can that behaviour be addressed and hopefully resolved to everybody's satisfaction? So these are the solutions we're looking for. And, I wish the project well in helping landlords and letting agents in Scotland.
Indeed, and I'm quite sure that if a landlord member does have concerns about antisocial behaviour or maybe dealing with something, they can approach Sal, and Sal will put them through to...
Exactly,
to
yes.
help
So
them
we will
support.
act as that conduit there. Obviously, we've got Ava's details. She was mentioning we are issuing information to our members about the subject in this new project, and she will be part of some online events that we'll be doing too. So this is an ongoing piece of work, and it's literally just been launched now. And as Ava was saying, she's working up the programme as we speak. But she's keen to hear from landlords and agents now. So basically, make contact if you're interested.
Thanks, John. And with that, another episode of Landlord Voice comes to an end. If you've enjoyed this or any of our other episodes, they are still all available wherever you podcast. And we would ask you to please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really helps us out. It takes an awful lot of effort to put these shows together, and every little bit of support really helps us out. But for that, one thing we do need to mention is we will be taking a month's break. We're not going to be here. The month after this releases. We're taking some time off, and we'll be back in September. I believe that's when we're looking at. So just remains to say for me, Alan Grant, and for John Blackwood, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, and have a great summer.
Landlord Voice is a podcast by the Scottish Association of Landlords, produced in partnership with Alan Grant Communications and Mallard Productions. All footage and music was used with permission. Questions, comments, suggestions, or other feedback should be sent to alan@alangrantcommunications.com.